Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and I am excited for this conversation. I don't get to have a cool conversation like this very often, and we're talking about little bit of gender diversity, but I have an expert here in the room with me. This is Carole Powers. She is the founder of Enlightened Inclusion. So how are you doing, Carole?
I'm fine, thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Yes, my pleasure. So as I mentioned, we're talking a little bit about gender diversity, and that is kind of a point of contention, I think, for some people in some industries. But it is necessary that we have this conversation. I think a lot of times certain aspects of the Me Too movement have been shined in great lights, and certain aspects have been shined very poorly. So I do have some great conversation that we're going to get into mostly in the second half. But before we do any of that, let's talk about your baby, Enlightened Inclusion. And a little bit, I would like to actually start with your background.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So I have spent the first 15 years of my career in the global branding arena as a copywriter and a creative director, and working in multinational communication networks, advertising agencies, things like that. And in the course of that, which obviously is a very male-dominated industry, there has been something in the industry called the 3% Club. And what that refers to is, for a very long time, only 3% of the creative directors in the industry were women. That number's gotten better. We're into double digits now, so
Fantastic.
Things are improving. Yeah. But so through the course of that, I got a lot of experience in what it was like to be the only one in the room and all the kind of things that people are talking about now. And I think every woman has to face the same thing in her own way, which is, am I going to get mired down in that, or am I going to find a way to rise above that?
Right.
Yeah. So through the course, I found ways to sort of rise above, not ignore, not turn a blind eye, nothing like that, but to create really good cross-gender relationships that were productive rather than antagonistic.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that is going to be really helpful as we move forward today. That, the creativity, having grown up in the creative field, you can kind of see how to reposition things to make them more productive, more positive, more palatable to people in the world. So those two things, along with the management, as I got into creative management and started, just helping other careers grow. One thing I sort of realized was, like, we're using these really cool success principles to take products off the charts around the globe. And what would happen if we repurposed those products, those success principles from products to people? So I sort of started doing that within my teams and within my groups, and it really worked.
Interesting.
Yeah, the exact same principles. When a human being starts to see themselves as valuable of a commodity as, let's say, a detergent, for an example, which isn't a very valuable commodity, really.
Right.
They find new ways to grow, new ways to think, new ways to position themselves for success. And that sort of launched or branched out my career in a big way. I got a lot into coaching people that way. Wrote a book based on those principles that came out about 4 years ago. And that launched me into some executive coaching. So did a lot of that for various industries across the board. So now I really sort of, be it a product or a person, I use these same principles to create success, which is really what led me to Enlightened Inclusion.
Yes.
Another thing you really learn in branding and marketing is you can spot trends.
Yeah.
Right? So you can kind of see how culture is shifting and then learn how to pivot to make sure that, you keep shifting as a company to meet that, grow from that, grow through that. So the Me Too movement's been, in my eyes, amazing, and also presented a whole new set of modern challenges in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so what I'm seeing in terms of the pivoting of the culture is that a lot of companies are not setting themselves up for success moving forward because they're not. Yes.
I just, real quick, I want to ask, what's one thing that you're seeing that they're not setting themselves up for success?
One thing that I'm seeing is that there is some sanctioning within companies for the polarization of the genders.
Oh, right.
And you can't have half your workforce actively not speaking to the other half of your workforce and really expect productivity to continue.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that insight.
Yeah. So I think, so I took all these principles and all this coaching and sort of thought, how do we apply this directly to what's happening in the backlash of Me Too, because I hear a lot of people talking about the problem, but I don't see a lot of people bringing forth a solution.
Right.
And rather than have to, react to it, how can we proactively start to set companies up to succeed? There's all this momentum now in the hiring and the diversity. And how do we make sure those initiatives don't fail because we haven't set people up on the inside that once they've been placed, they can now, succeed within that placement?
Yes, absolutely. I do believe, however, that communication is where to start. Right? You need to start having these conversations. And so while you said you see a lot of people talking about it, no one's coming forth with solutions. I think one solution up front is to have those conversations and allow people to be a little bit candid once in a while.
Oh, sure.
Yes. Because it's hard to talk about gender issues, equality issues in the workplace anyway. But to feel stifled in being able to ask or answer certain questions.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
It's a volatile subject to begin with. And then if you, try to bury volatility, it's going to explode.
Exactly.
And we're seeing a lot of that happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we are. Gosh. So I am excited by your path here that you went. And one of my favorite things that you've said so far is that you've taken those tenets for success for products and applied them to people. Would you say that you're a little bit of a confidence builder for people?
I think for sure, but I think what I am is an eye-opener. I help
Okay.
people see their abilities.
Yeah.
And as an example to diversity, what makes a person diverse isn't simply their background, their ethnicity, their orientation, their gender, right? That's
Right.
the label of diversity.
Yeah.
The strength of diversity is in the perspectives and the skills and the talents that those experiences of the label brought to the person.
Right.
So that's, if I can help people see that, it's yours, it's not mine. And if I can show that to you and you can learn how to identify it and leverage it, then you're going to be more confident because you're suddenly going to realize how much more you're bringing to the table.
Yes. Well, let's talk about Enlightened Inclusion itself.
Cool.
Yes. So you started this, you were clearly motivated in seeing how to build people and get them informed of their strengths, eye-opening to that. So you started Enlightened Inclusion about a year ago?
I founded Enlightened Inclusion in
Yes.
2019, and really everything leading up to it about 2 years ago.
Okay.
As all this stuff was starting to unfold, as the studies were starting to come in, as the awareness was beginning to grow, I just sort of saw, we got to make sure this doesn't, get shot in the foot.
Right.
This is really great progress as long as
There's
there's forward motion.
Yes.
Right.
So we're going to talk a little bit today about that forward motion, but tell me first about the mission and the vision behind Enlightened Inclusion. What are your end goals? Obviously, as a business, you don't want to end that business, but
Right.
your ultimate goals.
Yeah, I don't think you can end a business that is in business to help people succeed because there's always new levels of success.
Yeah.
But to breed independence is always the best way for any business to sort of be of service.
Yes.
I would say the mission is to ensure that diversity and inclusion policies succeed.
Okay.
They're now in place.
Yes.
Right? They're happening. There's momentum growing. More work to be done, for sure.
Of course.
But it now needs to be, like, I look at diversity as a hiring policy and inclusion as a cultural norm. So we've got the hiring policies going. We need to take the next step. That's a big part of the mission. And if we do that, then it kind of leads back to what we were talking about just a minute ago. My goal, the goal of this company would be for everybody to rise above the label of gender, of orientation, of ethnicity, of age, and to see what those experiences have cultivated within them that they can bring to create a greater contribution, a greater impact, and a greater level of success. I think we should all be judged by how we're giving to a situation, not who we are in a situation.
Yes. Oh, I like that a lot. Actually, yeah. As you could say, that really clicks with me. I super appreciate and I see how that is appealing, and I'm on board for that.
Cool.
Yes.
It starts to do away with politics, which is nice. Politics in the general sense.
Right.
Not in the governmental sense. I think the more we get mired down in that, the more divided we get, the more polarized we get, the less focused we are on what will help us succeed.
Yes, I agree with you. There are more and more areas where you fit into smaller and smaller groups, and rather than overcoming and seeing what we all have in common, a lot of us push back against what we don't see fits our criteria for
Right.
what's right.
Right. So
Yeah.
therein differences divide us.
Yes.
Whereas really what makes us different is our strength. And we all bring a strength to the table, so that's a common ground.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Tell me what a womentorship is.
Well, mentorship is obviously women in mentorship, that a word put together, the
Yeah.
writer and me created. And that's a female-focused leadership development program. So I thought it was very important to do that for a couple reasons. It's a very interesting to have a mission of wanting to bring everyone together and yet section off this development for women only. So
Yeah.
I recognize that. But there's a few things going on right now in the wake of the movement, right? We have this mentorship gap that is on the rise. Lean In and SurveyMonkey just recently came out with another study. They've been studying the effects of Me Too for the past 2 years. And in this latest study, 60% of US male managers and 40% of UK male managers are now uncomfortable in common workplace situations with women. As you start to break that down, they're 3 times more uncomfortable mentoring.
Wow.
So that's a problem. We're placing women, right? That's great. We're finally placing women in leadership roles.
Yes.
Yet, once they're there, they are not getting access to the development, to the one-on-one meetings, to the stakeholder information. They're not getting equal access. Therefore, they're not, those initiatives are not going to succeed.
Right.
Right? That's just, nobody could. No male, no woman could succeed in that situation if they're not being developed.
Exactly.
So I think it's really important on that front to have something just for women. If a company happens to be in turmoil and they just can't get it together right now, then bring someone in who can help develop that end of your workforce. Make sure there is no discrimination happening, because to exclude someone on the basis of sex is
Yes.
the very definition of gender discrimination, which is on the rise right now. Probably.
Well, and to ask a little bit about that, I'm imagining a lot of these companies, while these men are feeling uncomfortable, again, that 60% US male, 40% UK male, feel a little bit uncomfortable. And if you break that down to mentorship, it's 3 times more. Are they realize that they're even doing it, or is it simply out of fear that they're not reaching out to these women?
I think the answer to both those questions is yes.
Yeah.
I think there's fear and uncertainty. Suddenly the lines have shifted dramatically.
Yes.
And a lot of that is good. But, so there's a reaction to that shift that's a little unhealthy. And people don't know where the line is. And so they just take a giant step backwards.
Right.
Right? So are they aware of it? Yes. Are they doing it out of fear? Yes. Is it malice? For the most part, no.
Yeah.
I'm sure, I have seen some sort of punitive behavior.
As would come with any movement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you can't make everybody want to grow. You can't make everybody want to move on. But I think, the train's left the station, and that's great news.
Yes.
We just got to make sure everybody on the train is together.
Yeah.
And not in their own cars talking about each other.
Exactly.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's fascinating to me. This is one thing that I have seen over and over again, because I do have a lot of women leaders that come on the show and talk, and it's I'm fairly new into the business world myself, and so it's so awesome to see this, right? I'm actually seeing this trend happen as I'm starting my career in business industries. I was in the aviation industry, which is kind of really closed off and it has its own set of gender disquality issues. But that being said, it's really cool to see this. But I also have seen that there is a lack of men to women mentorship. And because these men have had so much experience in leadership roles, it's really sad that these women can't get access to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's sad. It's unproductive. It's really, if you've paid to bring someone on board.
Yeah.
And you're paying them every day to bring their best to the table, but you're not letting them do that, then you're wasting your money.
Yeah.
Not because you hired the woman, but because you have a dynamic in place that doesn't support productivity across the board.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I also think it's really important. This is a little bit of a shift from what we're talking about, but for women leaders, for so long, and I know this was the case for me, in a lot of ways you kind of had to act like a man to succeed, right? And I don't mean that like, ooh, we had to act like men. But there were certain, behavioral patterns in place, and you had to be okay with them. And you had to it was not okay to be nurturing.
Right.
Right? It was not okay to be emotional. There's no crying in baseball. Like,
You
all
have
that
to
kind
give
of
up,
stuff.
up the I'm sorries. You have to make yourself clear and pointed. You can't ask a question. You have to state what you're going to do. Right.
And then that would be sort of shut down. Like, women were bossy, women were bitchy, women,
Right.
if I can say that. So I think that the other aspect of the womentorship is to help set women up to lead as women.
Okay.
And I think that's really important because I think now there's room for it.
Yes.
Now there's been an opening, and it's like, take, for example, women are nurturing, so they should raise children. Well, isn't nurturing just another word for mentoring?
Exactly.
And don't we need to nurture talent? And wouldn't you like that innate ability to be brought to use in your workforce?
Right.
Right? So and I can go across the board for every ding women have taken. I can tell you why that perceived weakness is actually a proven strength.
Yeah.
And as women can look at that and embrace that and see that, then they become more confident as leaders. And they stop feeling like they have to act in a certain way and start succeeding as who they are. And that's really what true success is.
Yes, absolutely. Very well said. Typically when I think of women leadership, I think of my mom, right? Like when I think of the women in my life, my mom's always that first one to pop up. And one of the things that she was really good at, my sister and I are 8 years apart. It's a huge difference.
For sure.
And I was super annoying. I'm the youngest, so it was very annoying to my sister, right? But my mom always had a compromise for us at the end of the day, right? Well, if you'd stop reading her diary, she wouldn't tell on you, right? Like that kind of stuff. Like, stop reading her diary, she won't beat you up.
Right.
And so those are the kinds of things that women can definitely bring to the workforce, right? Those are the things that we need the women in the office for.
For sure.
Yeah.
We are collaborators by nature.
Yes.
And that just means teamwork.
Exactly.
And that just means productivity, and that just means money in the bank.
Right? If we're all on the same page and we're all striving towards the same goal, then we know that at the end of the day, the business is going to get done and we're all going to be happier for it.
Right. And what's really interesting is like what we're talking about now, we're talking about women,
Right.
but the truth is these are feminine characteristics.
Right.
And those don't just belong to women.
Of course not.
Right?
Of course
So that's the beauty of it. The more that men can see, you know what, I'm actually a good mentor.
Yeah.
I just never thought about that as a feminine characteristic. So, and a woman can be like, you know what, I'm actually a super rational thinker. Well, that's a traditional male characteristic, right? Mm-hmm. But the more we find each of these inside of us, we find balance, we find a way to respect what's coming to the table, and then naturally some of that bad behavior is going to dissipate because when you respect someone, you don't harass them,
Right.
right? When you respect someone, you don't hold them back.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff is if we can start to change the cultural mindsets within the companies is going to go a long way to supporting the policies.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. You mentioned collaboration.
Yes.
One of the things that I definitely saw on enlighteninclusion.com, which is your website, is gender collaboration, which was kind of not a new concept to me by any means, but one that I guess I hadn't really delved into before. So tell me a little bit about your take on gender collaboration.
So right now, and I'm so passionate about this because in the professional world, of course in the world at large, but my focus is the professional world. So professional men and professional women, I don't think have ever been further apart, right?
Okay.
And I think a lot of this is the discomfort.
Yeah.
Men are like, I don't know what to do. And women are like, what do you mean? Well, it's still me.
Yeah.
You've been hugging me for 20 years. It's okay to hug me today. Or
Yeah.
maybe it's not in your company, but
Right.
whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
We've been having a drink together at the company party for 20 years, laughing about our kids. Why can't we do that now? Right?
Yeah.
So there's confusion on both sides.
Of course.
And that is creating all sorts of problems on both sides. A lot of them we sort of have already mentioned.
Yes.
But there's men who are refusing to talk to women. There have been some really great studies out there. There's some amazing quotes. And there are women who are like, oh my God, this movement has actually made it harder for me. A lot of women in venture capitalism. That stuff happens in meetings at night in bars.
Right.
And these women are like, I cannot get in within 10 feet of someone at a bar. It's like, oh, well, that wasn't the point,
Right.
right? The point was just to make sure it was a professional, respectful conversation that was had in a work situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think, so gender collaboration does a lot of what we've talked about a little bit. It's, there's the training for women, but we need to train men and women to work together in a new way because the rules have changed. The ground has shifted. And so what this program does is it sort of takes this it kind of rebrands the notion of professional gender collaboration. The first thing it does is changes the way we look at one another. So if you think about any company that's rebranding, they're repositioning themselves to be seen differently. Right? So this repositions the mindset of men and women to see each other from a higher perspective, a better place.
Yeah.
And then once we can do that and diffuse a little bit of the emotion and the uncertainty, it also does some practical things, because those are needed too, right? We're going to create a set of shared agreements that everybody is comfortable with. Going to remove some more uncertainty that way. We're going to give everybody strategies for what to do when you're traveling. Because a lot of human resources departments are saying, we're just not going to have men and women travel together. Well,
that also defeats the purpose.
Who's going to miss out on the career opportunity?
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's the man or the woman, somebody's being held back, right? So that's no good. So let's put in strategies in place for social situations, for holiday parties, for travel, for work dinners. Let's just bring a little common sense back to the table and give everybody something they can lean into that's shared, that's agreed upon, that's certain, so that it stops becoming somebody gets held back and starts becoming how can we move forward together.
Yes. How do you suggest implementing that? As we've talked about, these policies are in place. We've got new policies, right? And not necessarily new policies, but the playing ground has shifted a little bit. In the practicality of things, more regulation in the workplace can equal more contempt.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I guess a suggestion of a tip or something that we can put on the books to make sure that I can talk to Roger at the holiday party just like I've been doing for the last 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think it can be policy.
Okay.
In fact, Johnny Miller, who is the president and CEO of Society of Human Resource Management, so really big, right?
Yeah.
Worldwide. And he said, there is a quote that says, the Me Too movement will fail if it stops with legal policy only. These things have to be addressed on the cultural level.
Yeah.
And he's completely right. So my first tip is to bring it down into the DNA of the company. You can say a company's culture is created by the company's vision and the company's values, and that's all good and well, but the truth is, culture is created by the people who live it and breathe it every day.
Yeah.
By the attitudes we have towards one another, by the way we are treated in meetings, on the floor, at the water cooler, whatever that is, right? And that right now is what's a mess. Yeah. So it's such a very small step, but small steps are a way to get started.
Of course.
I think if a company doesn't want to bring in professional training, create a guided listening session. Get everyone in a room together and make some decisions, have some conversations, and get it out in the open. At least then people aren't wondering in their own heads, everybody thinking their own solution to it.
Right. Which is great. Exactly. Get everyone on that even playing field. I love that. For any business issue, right? But particularly for this one. Would you say that this is more of a top-down movement? Do we need to see the leaders really taking control of this? Or is it better for employees to really embrace this movement and move forward on their own?
The answer to that is it's always good if you can lead by example.
Yeah.
But the truth is a lot of this is happening down in the trenches.
Yeah.
So I would not say it's a 1-2 punch. I would say it's an A-B even punch.
Okay.
So I think you need to, it's okay to train separately because there's separate issues that come up for executives.
Yes.
Than for employees. But I think it's needed across the board.
Fantastic. Well, Mary Carole, we do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'm very excited to continue this conversation. We're really going to jump into the Me Too movement here and pros and cons, right? Because you can't just have pros when any movement is involved. There's sometimes some bad things that happen, and I really want to address that with you. So stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. You can find this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are talking about enlightened inclusion, including mentorship and gender collaboration and all these awesome words. But at the heart of it, We're talking about gender equality in the workplace when it comes down to business. But here to speak with me is founder of Enlightened Inclusion, Carole Powers. So thanks for staying with us. You have brought me some really awesome questions from some men.
Yes.
Yes.
I reached out to some gentlemen that I've worked with over the course of, I'd say, the last 20 years.
Okay.
And I made sure to hit every generation, because I think whether you're walking into the workforce or you're looking back on it or you're somewhere in the middle, you have a really unique perspective on what to bring.
Yeah.
So from millennial males to retired global executives.
Yeah.
We have that at the table, and I think we got some great, thoughtful questions.
Yes, and as far as those questions are concerned, those are in a little bit more towards the Me Too movement and how that is impacting these men. And funnily enough, I do want to say I asked for someone to join us in person. But understandably so, after reading these questions, it's a little scary to put your face to these, but I love how real these guys got.
Right. And I think that's why there was a hesitation. I think so many men truly are looking to be a part of the solution, but they're very confused on how to do that. And I think wanting the best answers they could get, they didn't want the voice of a male to be on the question, just the perspective of a male. So hopefully that will bring some productivity to a conversation that culturally has been pretty difficult to have.
Absolutely, and as I said in the last segment, we can't start on movements without fostering some conversation, and sometimes that conversation has to be really candid and very real. And so I get that having that spotlight is a little tough, but we'll go ahead and start with our first question. And again, these are anonymous, so no names. But this one is on the level of professional training, and this one I think you and I had talked about before we started the show here, and it was one that pinged me a little bit. It's so far as, gosh, that's a great question. I'm angry he has to ask it, but it's real. But what he says here is, because women have not been allowed to be a part of the boys' club and have been held back, I feel like they are not learning their field to the degree men have, and now there's a big push to make sure that women are in high-level positions. Some of these women really don't have the experience it takes to succeed in this position. How should companies make sure women, after years of having been held back, are qualified enough to suddenly take on leadership roles? Fascinating question.
Right. Full of landmines.
Yeah, full.
Right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Admittedly so. Like if you saw the paragraph that question came in, it was actually 3 times as long.
Okay.
Because this particular gentleman recognized the catch-22.
Of course.
We, as a profession that held women back, are now trying to, get woke and bring women forward, but we haven't trained them to come forward.
Right.
And that's fair. There's also, for years, men who might not have been qualified got those positions because they were men.
Right.
So in a way, it's not that different. But as an answer to his question, I think we have to go back to mentorship. And it has to be proactive mentorship, not reactive mentorship, right? You can't just throw a woman into a position to check a box.
Yes.
I mean, you can, and you are, for the most part. Ubiquitous lots of companies are,
right? But
that's not the enlightened solution. Thus enlightened inclusion, right?
Yes.
So again, female leadership, I feel like that needs to be an onboarding. Let's start that with hiring, because we are coming into a system that has not yet shifted all the way to a more evolved state. So let's make sure women know how to communicate without, getting angry. Let's make sure women know what to do in a situation where they're still being marginalized without coming across as a troublemaker.
Right.
Let's make sure women know what they're bringing to the table as leaders so that they can start to foster that right away. So as the opportunities come, they are ready to step into that position.
Yeah.
Right now the mentorship is a little reactive, meaning, okay, you're right, they've been held back and now we got to get them there.
Right.
So I think there needs to be a budget for that.
Yeah.
I think, and it's not just learning your industry. It's learning to lead.
Right.
Those principles can be applied to any industry to help every business succeed at a new level.
I completely agree with you. And to take a step back, I definitely think every company should take a moment to invest in how to be a leader, because inevitably you're going to have people moving up. And if you don't have some sort of training place and program for leadership, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, we are talking about women here, but men need to be trained as well.
Yes.
What it means to be a male leader in the professional world is changing.
Yes.
Right? So it's fair to set them up for success as well.
Mm-hmm.
The more women are set up for success, the more they can help men succeed. The more men are set up for success, they can help women succeed. It's a whole, you know, we're all in it together
Yes.
kind of thing. So leadership across the board. But to address this particular, I almost said his name, this particular question, we need to, A, be proactive in setting women up for success, and B, companies need to take action and stop talking about taking action. Don't talk about empowering women, pay women.
Mm-hmm.
That's empowerment, right?
Yes.
Don't talk about, you know, we're going to get to mentoring women. Mentor them.
Yeah.
Don't talk about how you're uncomfortable. Find a way to be comfortable.
Right.
Get in the room with someone.
Yeah.
Show by example. Yeah.
And don't just put out that you're going to have 50% leadership on your board and then put people that should have never been in those positions there just because it meets a quota.
Right. You're not helping anyone except for your own PR. And ultimately, you're not even helping your own PR because that's, you know, that stuff shines through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tough question to answer, but I like the answer that you gave.
Great.
Yes. Invest in that leadership. So question 2, boundaries. This one was a little bit tough, but I feel like it might be easier to answer. So with awareness and emotions so heightened and the boundaries shifting so rapidly and dramatically, I find myself unsure of how to act or react in certain situations. I find myself paralyzed for fear of making it worse when my intention is actually to make it better. For example, if I see that a woman is feeling uncomfortable in regard to how a male colleague is speaking or misbehaving, or excuse me, not misbehaving, or behaving, do I step in and say something, or is that going to be considered mansplaining on behalf of her, or me trying to fix it or save her? Great question, actually, and it was one that I hadn't considered before, but I think overall, any time that you step up for somebody that's being mistreated, or if you see that anyone's feeling uncomfortable in the workspace situation, it is always okay to stand up for that person and simply say, hey, you're making someone uncomfortable. How about you stop or rewind? Think about what you're saying. It's always okay, I think, to stand up. If you over-explain a situation, that is what can come off a little bit as mansplaining or trying to save me. I don't need you to explain why I'm uncomfortable. You don't know why I'm uncomfortable, right? You've come into the situation, you see that I look uncomfortable, but to explain it for me is not okay. To say, hey, you are making people uncomfortable, please stop. It's enough.
I agree with that. And
Yeah.
I think too, I understand the spirit in which the question is being asked,
course.
which is this fear of this paralysis of making any movement.
Yeah.
So what I would say is, if you as a man or a woman, but particularly a male, because we're talking about that right now, if you see a situation like that, I would like to think it's actually making you uncomfortable.
Right.
Right? So don't do it for her. Do it for you. So step 1, shift your perspective. Do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And then sort of elevate your motivation. You're not stepping in to save anyone. If that is against your values, then speak up.
Yeah.
Speak up and that's leadership,
Right.
right? That's integrity. If you are trying to diffuse a situation between 2 coworkers, that's a personality conflict. If you are stepping up because someone has transgressed against what you believe to be right, that's integrity.
Yeah.
So act with integrity. Come at it because it's wrong for you, right? And in doing so, it'll be exactly what you said,
Yeah.
right? Of course, we don't sit by and let injustices happen.
Right.
There's too much of that, in the world right now. But how do we step in? Mm-hmm. And that's one way I think that could really be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. This third question here, bridging the current divide, which is something we spoke a little bit about in the last segment. Bridging the divide is so important right now, and most guys are a little scared and lost on how to accomplish that. I think there's also a lot of guilt that is happening. I know I feel like I was blind to the issue. I take solace in knowing I never treated a female colleague any differently or thought any less of their ability because of their gender, but I was also not paying attention to when it did happen to them, or turning the other way thinking I was in no real position to change the attitude. Question is, what do women feel still needs to be done in order for them to truly feel like they are on a level playing field with men as we move forward? I have a question to that is, what do you as men think has already been done? Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think what he is referring to is the fact that there is now an awareness.
Yes.
He is now aware that he was inadvertently part of a problem.
Okay.
Whereas maybe he didn't realize that before. Mm-hmm. But yes, awareness does not cancel out all that needs to be done.
Of course.
So, the answer to that question, what needs to be done? A lot. A lot. First thing, maybe as a man, you can help stop men from going like this and stepping back and saying, I'm just not going to talk to women. There's such an innate, inherent privilege in that point of view. If all women decided not to talk to men in the workforce, we would just naturally fail because the men are in the leadership roles.
Right.
But men cannot talk to women and still play up and succeed. And I don't even think most men think about it like that. They don't think about the inherent privilege that is in that.
Yeah.
So when you see that happening, stop it. Or be the one that stops it. Set the example, right? It's got to start somewhere. I know that's a baby step, but it's a step.
It's a step.
And any step forward is a good step.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I think another great thing is, that's the first one. Stop the polarization and the segregation. It wasn't good for our culture at large. It's not good for our corporate cultures at all. I think we need to continue to grow representation, not from a check the box kind of place, which we've talked a lot about, right? That just becomes like...
People see through that.
Right.
As employees, I see through that. I see that you hired a woman in a leadership position because it needed to be filled, and a woman was your best choice due to PR reasons.
Right.
I see through that.
Right. And most people do. Right. So it's a short-term, it's a Band-Aid on a situation that's hemorrhaging. You can't put a Band-Aid on that, right? That's not going to last very long. It's also, you put a talent, great piece of talent in place and you don't foster them, that talent's going to leave. It's going to cost your company money. It's going to cost your culture morale. Mm-hmm. None of that's any good. So step out of token hiring. That needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And step into integrity and enlightenment as you're hiring.
Right.
That needs to happen. I think the way to do that, like we talked about, is, beyond policy.
Yes.
I think that's very important. I think putting your money where your mouth is as a company is huge. Again, don't talk about empowering women. Don't start like little groups inside, but not pay women equally.
Right.
Right? Yeah. Create equality, like really take a step to do that. Not that those little groups aren't great, but they aren't enough.
Right.
Right? That's a little bit of lip service. It's a little bit of a PR massage. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit of, look, we have something for women. No, what we need is equality. And to your point, the playing field is nowhere near level yet, but at least we're really talking about leveling it.
Exactly.
And so that's great progress. I mean, progress is messy.
Yes.
And right now things are a bit of a mess.
Right. And progress isn't just a straight uphill. It's a curly line to get there, right?
Sure.
We'll take a step back a little bit, but I think these questions are really helping us get to that next level up.
Yes.
Yeah. So moving on, this fourth question here is, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again, or that this attempt at true equality doesn't just fade away after the initial movement and awareness has come to light? Great question, right?
Yes.
It fosters on that, plateau, right?
Right.
We need to stay away from plateaus and make sure that we're still rising. So one of the things that I wrote down here is stay vigilant of old habits, right? If your old habit is to go and get advice from Mark, right? Maybe try Martha.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. As long as Martha's there to give advice.
Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think a really important thing, and this is maybe more of a macro answer to the question.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about this. The very nature of a movement needs to keep moving.
Yes.
And I think there's a little bit of a stall right now. And I think that stall is reactionary. a little bit, right? We kind of were talking about what would be the pros and the cons of Me Too. I think awareness is a pro. I think activism is always a pro. I think the only black and white in this situation is harassment has to stop and workplaces need to be safe.
Yes.
That's just it. That needs to happen, right?
Yes.
Within that, how that happens, that's going to be different for every company. That's going to be different for every agency or, every industry. But in terms of keeping the movement moving forward, we now need to, the awareness is good. The reaction to the awareness is creating a stall. Women are very, very angry still. And men are, very, very like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Hands off. Yeah.
Right. And so there's the polarization. So I think step one was the activism and the awareness. That's got the ball rolling and that needs to continue. That's nowhere near done.
Right.
Right. But step two, forward motion. How do we make sure we don't stall out, which was the question? Collaboration and connection.
Yes.
This is an opportunity to come together. All of this was never meant to bring men and women further apart, right?
Right.
So let's just everybody sort of diffuse and dismantle all the bombs that are going off.
Yeah.
Bad analogy, but all the volatility
Yes.
that is in the situation. And use a little common sense. Stop seeing each other as the enemy. We need each other to survive across the board, as a human race and as, business colleagues.
Yes.
We need one another. We need teamwork.
Absolutely, which actually leads me into the next question here. Somebody did ask specifically about that, and this is the millennial male that we have here. As a millennial male, I feel as though I haven't had a hand in oppressing women historically in different ways. I want the best for my female peers, but often I feel I'm automatically seen as the enemy because I was born with a Y chromosome. Often, when engaging in conversations on the women's movement, I have encountered aggression and an attitude that says if I don't agree with the woman speaking, then I am part of the problem. I want to help bring this better world men and women both want. I want to help fix these issues women are facing. I want women to be respected, have the same opportunities, resources, etc. But how do we collaborate and work through these issues without labeling each other as morally bankrupt if we have a difference of perspective on the world and how to bring about these solutions? Great question. I think it personally, I look at this as a bigger issue. We're constantly getting divided by opinions, politically, in the workforce, racially, right? All of those areas are areas where we're pitted and labeled against each other a lot of the time. So I think it's speaking into that bigger issue. So what I'm gathering from his question here is that he definitely wants to help. But if he has a difference of opinion at all on how to move forward, then he's also being shamed and labeled as bad for the women's movement.
Right. And that's not productive at all.
At all.
Like George Washington and founding fathers had a difference of opinion about how a government should be run.
Right.
And that difference of opinion actually led to something great.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, difference of opinion on about how people should be treated. And that led to a civil, rights movement, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
Differences of opinion are a gateway to progress.
Yes.
So that goes back to the volatility we were speaking of, right? Mm-hmm. It needs to be okay to have the discussion. Now, if that difference of opinion is disrespectful or marginalizing in any way, then absolutely, there's not room for that anymore. Right. But there's lots of ways to go at it. And I have this, was the millennial male. So it was really interesting to get the younger perspective.
Yeah.
And he did say something else, which was a lot of the young women I'm talking with have never even had the experiences that we're fighting against, and yet they're more angry than the women who have.
Right.
And I thought that was really interesting.
So because I've seen it a little bit too. I am an older millennial myself, but for the younger millennials, what I've seen is this swing in the other direction of no men in power, right? Which is just as devastating. I feel like that anger is leading into we need to be better than men, and that's not at all what this is about.
Right. If you're going for equality, then you don't want to smash anyone.
Exactly.
You don't want to put anyone down. That's not equality.
Yeah.
I think it's really important and first of all, let me back up. There is a time and a place for anger.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
It helped, and this whole movement, right? You have to get angry to stand up. to push back, to say no more.
Yeah.
That is appropriate. If you are personally being harassed, you get angry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all of those things. If you are being marginalized, you rise up. That should go without saying. But if you are just a part of wanting to stand up for women at large, that's great too. We need everyone to come together.
Yeah.
However, there is a difference between anger and passion. A big difference.
Yes.
We need to be passionate. We need to stay passionate. That's what's going to sustain us going forward. I know many men who are passionate as well, right? But anger repels people. It pushes them away. And I think that's a little bit what this question is referring to. Like, there's nowhere to meet in the middle, right? But passion pulls people to you.
Yeah.
Passion is a magnet, and passion feeds your energy. Anger depletes your energy. This whole movement is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
We do not need our energy depleted. Men do not need their energy depleted. We need to come together. We need to figure out how to feed each other and keep it moving forward. So I think it's really important for both men and women. I mean, men are angry now because they're feeling, victimized by the movement.
Yeah.
And women felt victimized, therefore there was a movement.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And the truth is, yes, we as women have been victimized, but we as women are not victims.
Right.
We are stronger than that. We are bigger than that. That whole situation has teed up what I consider to be the greatest comeback story that's about to be told. It's all about strength. It's all about forward motion. And so we have to be able to listen.
Right.
I don't know anyone who's changed the world without listening. Look at Gandhi. Right? Look at, next year is the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. That was a hunger strike. That wasn't a fight, right? There was a peacefulness and a power to it. Not a seeking of power, but a being of power.
Absolutely. Well, and the other side of things here, right? So these men are feeling victimized, and so a lot of women, their initial response is, good, now you know how it feels. And that is not the right mindset to be in.
Right.
It's, okay, great. So you see a little bit of the perspective. Let's talk about it.
Right.
How can we both not be victims here?
Right. And that response you're talking about comes from anger and frustration.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why someone might want a boss or a man to sit in the hot seat for a little while. We've, been kept back for millennia.
Yeah.
You can sit in the hot seat for more than 3 seconds, right? However, the truth is the hot seat does no one any good.
Exactly.
It's not productive.
It's not.
Right. So it's like, as long as people are aware and trying, truly trying, not fake trying, then listen.
Yeah.
Then listen, move the needle forward just a little bit. Eventually it will move forward all the way, as long as we're on the same team. I mean, team humanity, right? Really, we are all on the same team.
Yes.
And we need to learn to work together. When it comes to business, there's a ton of common ground. We all want to succeed. We all want to feel a sense of purpose. We all want to contribute from our strengths. We all want to grow. That's not gender specific.
No.
Right?
No.
Right.
That's a human condition.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes. Gosh, I have 10 more questions. Unfortunately, we are on a time limit here today. So I do want to know, Mary Carole, how can businesses get involved with you, get involved in this gender collaboration, maybe a mentorship?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think it's really important to go to the site and learn a little bit more. So that's enlighteninclusion.com. And the reason I say that is because these are really targeted solutions to very modern challenges.
Yes.
Right? So I think to learn a little bit more is big. Then reaching out through the site is great. I think it's also important for people to know we really try to mitigate the risk of getting involved. So we do offer just a half day on session talking to leadership and executives to help them understand what's going on in their company, how specifically to target these solutions, so that they have a lot more information with which to then decide how to move forward. So that's a nominal fee. That's an easy thing. And I think that's really important given the fact that so much is uncertain right now.
Absolutely. And to quote Schoolhouse Rock, knowledge is power, right? Yes. Thank you so much, Mary Carole Powers. It has been a pleasure having you on. I appreciate your time and bringing a light to a lot of these issues.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. And one more time, be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page. While you're here, you can find this show and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Check out enlightenedinclusion.com. We also have more information if you click on the link below in the description. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Same to you.